it had snatched her away, and even though they were holding hands. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I heard something along those
And
lines.
then Robin
I've heard
has a
some of
different
it.
thing that they were not holding hands, and they didn't. I don't know. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, tornado, and I've been spelling Slocum wrong the whole time. I just saw I've been putting a K there.
Slocum.
Yeah. Earliest childhood memory. Oh man, I'm writing on the back of mom's
Thing?
Yeah, of course. Of course I picked the one up that she's like right sketching out stuff. That's all right. I can use this paper. This is just like a...
Here's a pad. I can get a clean sheet.
I know normally I'd be writing it in my phone, but again, I'm not using it here. Slocum. So Slocum race riots. I want to know what her...
And I have to tell you, one of the times that I went, and when I was visiting, do you remember me flying out to Texas all the time?
I mean, yeah.
When Mom Max was had heart surgery. And
Oh,
all.
yeah.
I remember Mom Max and Robin and I were sitting around the breakfast table. I don't know where G was, but the subject of the birds and the bees came up. You know, how did you find out about the birds and the bees? And Mom Max said, well, I lived on a farm, so I was just watching farm animals, you know? And Robin said, well, which farm animals? Well, our horse.
Yeah.
And Rob was like, oh my gosh, a horse is hung, you know, like that. That must have scared you to death. And she kind of laughed. And then Robin said, well, what was the horse's name? She says, Old Dick.
No, it wasn't.
It was. And we lost it. Robin and I lost it.
She probably, because Dick was not a
it wasn't probably not a slang name then.
Correct.
Old Dick.
She's like, yeah, it was Old Dick. Oh my gosh. Grandma.
I didn't think Robin and I'd ever quit laughing.
She had no... Yeah, I remember his name was Old Dick. Oh man, that's funny. Slocum race riots. I want to know what the race relations...
Racial tensions.
...were like growing up.
Mm-hmm. They were strong with Mom Max, I got to tell you.
I know that.
She remembered, you know, the tensions were still high.
Yes, I know. I remember Mom Max. And it was very subtle, but I pick it up how, you know, there was a black man that came on the farm one time and, you know, Daddy Hub had to run him off kind of thing. Like, just in my brain, I'm going like,
why?
What? My best friend's black. Like I can remember that because I was in, you know, 4th, 5th grade, something like that. And Michael White, who's black, was my
But interestingly
best
enough,
friend.
Daddy Hub's right hand, farm hand, was old Jim Pat. He was a big black man.
Old Jim Pat.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm glad we're having this conversation so I could bring up those things because she might not. And I don't know if he was he around when she was born?
I don't know, but probably. Old Jim Pat, and they would slaughter a hog every fall and smoke it to put up bacon and hams and stuff for the winter.
Childhood.
You can ask her about hot shut tea. Mom Max told me that story.
Growing up as a preacher's daughter.
Preacher farmer daughter.
Yep. What'd you call it? Hot shuck?
Yep.
I don't even know how to spell shuck.
S-H-U-C-K, I would say.
Okay, that sounds right. Hot shuck tea. Slocum race riots, race relations, memories of segregation. I mean, man, you've witnessed that. That's just, it's so wild to think about. When you were born, you had segregation up until what age? When did they finally integrate? I know schools were schools the first thing to integrate, or was it like water fountains, buses, bathrooms, or was that all first and then schools came after?
I'm not sure when the separate water fountains and bathrooms disappeared. I just remember as a kid seeing and not really, think anything of it.
Of course you don't, because you grow up in it.
Yeah,
that's just how it is from the time you can remember.
Yep.
I know.
I don't remember when those disappeared, but I was.
You remember integration in the school?
Oh yeah, I was a freshman, which would have been '65, I think. When I think I'm getting the years right, I was a freshman when it became optional, and there were a handful of black kids that decided to come to the white school.
Gotcha.
And the next year it was mandatory. The younger kids, elementary kids, went to the black school, enjoying and used those facilities in the elementary school, and the middle and high school came to our facilities.
What do you mean went to their facilities? What do you mean?
Do what?
Elementary went to their facilities. What do you mean by that? I don't even understand what you mean.
Well, if you were in
white kids went to the
black school.
Yeah, they just said, hey, we have two schools here.
Yeah.
And wherever you live now, you're going.
It doesn't
this is
matter.
A school.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You're assigned to your school.
Yep.
Okay.
If you were fifth grade and below, you went to the black school, and if you were above fifth grade,
it became a normal school.
Yeah.
It wasn't. That didn't. I thought you were saying it stayed separated in elementary, and then when you got to middle and high schools, when the funnel came into the. Okay.
No. They immediately did everything. Because I remember the Bauer girls, the younger Bauer girls, Jacqueline and Janelle, were like, ugh, because Mr. Bauer was pretty.
It's pretty racist.
Yeah, he loved black jokes. What is it?
That means he's racist.
Well,
no, racist jokes are usually pretty funny. That's the reason for them, but it's also they can be offensive, so no one says them anymore. Which I also understand. But they're still funny. I don't care. If it's funny, it's funny.
Some are really funny.
Whether it's towards minorities or white people, it's funny. And what year was that? So that was 65 then? Your freshman year is when it, or was that the optional year and then the year after was mandatory?
I'm trying to remember in football team if I had any blacks on my football team when I was a freshman. I don't think I did. I think it happened in sophomore. So 66 would have been the mandatory integration. Well,
the optional black kids that chose to come in the year when it was optional, were they under any visible scrutiny that you could tell, or not really?
No, I mean they all kind of kept to themselves. But and even after integration, that was largely the case.
Right.
Which I would guess hadn't changed that much.
Yeah, it's
well,
I don't know. Like out here, I mean, Caden in school. Yeah. Growing up, I hung out with black friends all the time. It wasn't even the society had to put that thought into my head before I even knew what. I mean, obviously, I knew my friend was black and I was white, but that there wasn't any other distinguishing factor other than, he's got more skin color than I do. It's just, it wasn't a thing. Mike White and I would share popsicles from the ice cream man that would come through the. Right. We'd get the 2-ball screwball thing because there were 2 gumballs at the bottom. So we both just, it's kind of nasty, but we'd share this sloppy ice cream in the summer and just get to the bottom gumballs and eat it up, or come to the house and make nachos because that's all we ever had snack-wise growing up that was quick to make. We weren't a big snack house. So we had like the chips and cheese on a plate in the oven and then we played basketball religiously.
It says that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 forced school desegregation. In the late 60s and early 70s, but I don't think it happened that late.
When did you graduate high school?
69.
Yeah. God, you're such a hippie.
Mm-hmm.
69. And they forced integration when?
It became law in 1954, but it wasn't enforced. Nobody did it.
Became federal law?
Yeah.
Obviously. So federal law in 1954. And then it was, I guess it'd be interesting to know when it was optional for you for the kids. And the kids that actually chose to come, if you can try to remember back any type of discrimination your friends would do overtly or invertly. So you don't remember any like local, like you don't remember any people from your growing up that were against the whole integration thing that came in and were like, man, I can't believe they're letting those coloreds come into our school.
Sure, I remember people doing that. I know guys quit
It's crazy.
Quit the football team. I'm not going to be a tackling dummy for.
Oh my gosh.
You know. One of my good friends, Walter Willis, and he got it from his parents, but he and his big brother, older brother, quit the football team. I'm not going to go out there with them.
Oh my gosh.
Run over me.
Just brutal.
I'm still not getting a date. Maybe I ought to add in Texas.
Yeah, probably. I'm just looking here. The Slocum Massacre. An armed white mob in Texas massacred their black. Is that what the massacre was? They killed a bunch of black people?
Yeah, there was rumors, and nobody knows if it's true, that the blacks were organizing to come and get some rights or whatever, and a bunch of the farmers got scared about it. So they got together with guns and showed up in the black part of the community and I guess started shooting.
There's a story on it. Charlie Wilson, Cleveland Larkin, and Willistus Lusk Holly were walking down a dirt road in rural Slocum, Texas, when they were blindsided by a mob of armed white men. On their way to tend family livestock on July 29, 1910, the three black teenagers became the first casualties of what would turn out to be a shameful massacre, with groups of white Texans going from road to road, house to house, shooting black citizens. Wilson and Holly survived the attack, but Larkin succumbed to the injuries. The ensuing bloodshed lasted for at least 2 days, spilling in the South and Houston County. Black residents hastily gathered what belongings they could and escaped across creeks to wooded areas and marshes. Some families fled to a nearby town of Palestine, while others trekked farther. During the panic, they had no choice but to leave behind loved ones who'd been killed along the roads and in the woods of Slocum. As the violence intensified, local officials turned to Texas Governor Thomas Campbell and a company of U.S. Cavalry troops and Texas Rangers were brought in to quell the situation.
And this article says it wasn't mandatory in Texas till 1971. So Eagle Lake did it before, it was absolutely mandatory.
And what year?
1971.
Oh, it was 71. It was mandatory.
So yeah, but
so
I know
even when you were there,
I know there were blacks on my football team. I'm absolutely sure my sophomore year, but I think it was my freshman year that. Yeah, so sophomore year would have been fully integrated in Eagle Lake.
Gotcha.
So
interesting.
Because I know
and in that Slocum massacre, no one was prosecuted.
Yeah, not
my guess is there was a bunch of liquor fueling that rage, most likely.
I think it was more fear than liquor, but yeah.
I wonder, this one little article's from 19.
You wouldn't believe how long racial inequality lasted in the South. A guy that I worked with when I worked with medical staffing, so he was close to my age. When he was in his 20s, he watched a hanging, a lynching. A black man was lynched. He saw it. That was in Mississippi.
What year?
That would have probably been in the 70s.
Jeez.
Probably.
I know Mississippi was that last hardcore racist state.
Well, so was Alabama, but
yeah,
probably Mississippi was the very last.
What year do you feel like the racial tensions were kind of a thing of the past, or were you ever? Because I don't think you ever had animosity that you can highlight towards black people, because I know your mom, my grandmother, had those racial undertones. I could hear them when she would tell me old stories anytime it would come up, but nothing like overtly.
Yeah.
Like
there wasn't any.
Like outright outlandish, just racial talk. It was just always like there was always skepticism undertones of black people in general.
Yeah. And she had a really compassionate heart toward. It wasn't this not skin color, impoverished folks that were struggling financially. I mean, he would help. Didn't matter what color they were. He was. Yeah. He really had a soft heart. And was head of the Salvation Army in Eagle Lake. Okay. Which wasn't very organized.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He had folks looking for help come by his insurance office all the time.
Gotcha. Looking for work or just?
Looking for economic relief. I need help with my rent this month, or we don't have any food in the house, or, stuff like that. I think I've told you, Mike, riding to school when G would take me to elementary school and pick up Mexican kids, how I was like, what are you doing?
Right.
Even I had that. I guess I got it from Mom Max. The Mexican kids were going to get in our car. Well, it's raining. They ought to, he would stop, pick them up.
And that probably, I would assume, would change you quickly, because the solution in those situations is never segregation, it's exposure. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just being around. And as I get older, I'm thankful for my elementary years with Mike White, because he was
good guy.
He was, still great human being, individual, and we were just best buddies. Mike and I played mainly basketball, just every single day, all day. We'd bribe kids to come out and play us basketball. We'd literally, stakes would get higher and higher. We'll play to 11, you get 9. If you win, we'll give you $5. I'm not kidding. We did that several times.
I didn't know that.
Yes, several times. Just because we would get bored of playing against each other all the time, constantly. I mean, you play like 20 games of one-on-one. Eventually, like, man, it was a change of pace. Yeah, but as I got older, the more I'm grateful for that, because I've seen it in those undertones still, especially in Colorado out there, because there's just not that many minorities, and black people would walk in the room and you could feel the room change. And it's just so bizarre to me, because growing up in Atlanta, there's black people everywhere in Atlanta. It's like nothing. There's literally no difference. I don't care how scared. I have some friends now that would scare people that have that tendency. I think of Boomer. And Boomer knows it, and he knows that those racial undertones are there, so he consciously makes sure that he makes people feel good in that moment, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool to watch and to acknowledge, because that dude is, he's not just big and looks big. The dude is legit, probably the strongest human being I personally know. There's
I remember when you started CCU. After about 6 weeks, you sent me a text and said, "I saw my first black person today."
Yeah, that's right. I know.
I don't know if you remember doing that.
Because I was wondering, we're so close to Denver, and I'm like, where are all the black people out here? This is so weird.
You said, "I finally saw one."
I know. Finally saw a black guy. There's hope in Colorado. It's true, though. All right. But Aunt Bobby. So childhood, she's been married 3 times.
Yeah, you don't have to get into that. That'd probably embarrass her. No, that'd probably embarrass her.
It's not going. I'll ask her ahead of time, but I want to know. Do you care? You could. Someone that has been through 3 marriages could spit some knowledge that could be extremely valuable for the next person going through. Does she regret the breakups? What were the breakups? Did she have a husbands who were vice riddled, or they alcoholics?
I don't know what happened with Uncle Bob, the first one. Uncle Ray, he was a hard-nosed guy. He was in the Navy. He talked about how he would keep a roll of quarters. You know those scarves Navy guys wear around their neck? You know what I'm talking about, in their uniform? Keep a couple of rolls of quarters wrapped up in that scarf. He said, you go into a bar, if you got in a fight, you could take that you learned how to take that scarf off just like that, and you beat somebody.
It had what in it? Quarters,
rolls of quarters. You know, still in the package.
It's like dudes in prison put like soap in a pillowcase or something.
He would brag about that to Blake and me.
Were they drinkers at all? Did you have many?
I think
relatives or uncles that were?
I don't think any of my uncles drank that I know of.
You never saw them drinking. If you never saw them drinking, they probably weren't drinkers.
No, I never saw them drinking.
If you saw them enough, once you saw them once a year, and they held out for the evening or something.
And I don't know how, other than Blake going to University of Texas, which was somewhat of a party school.
Yeah.
How he got started, but man, he was a drinker. I remember being at his house one Christmas.
Who's Blake's mom?
Aunt Dorothy. Dorothy Lee. That's why Robin Lee was named after her middle name. That came from Dort. We were in Dallas one Christmas, and on Christmas Eve, Blake was driving around to all his closest friends, and for Christmas he was giving them a case of beer. He'd go up and leave it on their doorstep, and go drive to the next guy and leave it on the doorstep. He probably gave away 10 cases of beer. He had a party at his house one time on Lake Ray Hubbard, and he called it an upside down party. In one of his rooms, he had all the furniture tacked to the ceiling, upside down. Can't imagine what that took to do that.
He had all of what?
The furniture tacked to the ceiling. So when you walked in, everything was upside down.
No, what?
Also in that
I got hammered and had this great idea.
Also, in his bathroom, he put in a urinal. Don't you hate pissing in a pot? Well, yeah, kind of. So he put one in. True bachelor pad.
Cool.
He had a big pontoon boat. He called his party boat. You can still ski behind it. It wasn't a very good ski boat, but
Yeah, pontoons never are.
pontoon, get out there so they drink all day on the lake.
Yeah. So I'll ask her about the marriage thing, but I mean, that's fascinating. Someone's been married 3 times usually can give some pretty good relationship advice.
And I hope it's not 4, but anyway, 3
If
that I
it's
can
4,
remember.
it doesn't matter. Now, this day and age, it doesn't, no one's judging her
Yeah.
for that. I mean, I'm in a,
But still, with her background, I'm sure it was.
of course, coming from where the age she is,
Yeah.
marriage was a
Yeah.
do or die, unless
mean,
you're like victim of violence or someone is,
Me growing up, I can think of 2 people in Eagle Lake that got divorced
yeah, it was probably a huge.
before I went to college. Well, it wasn't a huge deal, but it was kind of whispered. Oh, wow, I can't believe they got a divorce. Wow.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Aunt Bobby's, her kids.
Steve, and Stacy.
She has 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So she has a boy and a girl. Steven is the oldest.
Yeah. He's a veterinarian in the Dallas area. And Stacy lives there too. I don't know what she does. She's single. I mean,
Does she have grandkids?
I don't know. I don't think Stacy has any kids, and I would think Stephen does, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know. I would think so.
Okay. So Bobby would have been, man, I'm even getting too ahead of myself. There's plenty of other stuff. Childhood. I mean, she has to remember with extreme detail the World War II era, because she would have been 13 to 16, 17. She's born in 1930, we guess. But she would have been as young as 12 or as old as 14.
And all of her sisters,
Depending on when she was born.
because she was youngest, all of her sisters I know were married and husbands in the military
Yeah.
at that time. So she would have
Yeah.
had some kind of direct
Man.
hit home, you know what I mean?
World War II. There's tons of questions.
Did you gather around the radio every night? Those kind of things. That's what families did. No TV, you know?
Yep.
Gather around the radio and listen to FDR. It'd be interesting to see if she listened to, have you ever heard FDR's thing about December 7th? Today, December 7th, a date that will live in infamy. The Japanese Empire, without warning and unequivocally, something like that, attacked Pearl Harbor. We're in a state of war with Japan. You ever heard that recording?
I have.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to know if she listened to that, if she heard it on the radio.
Yeah, I want to know, like, if she can remember what the cultural tone was around her area. Was it this, like, the U.S. kind of everyone holding hands with their neighbors to, like, say, hey, we're at war, let's support our guys? Was it as profound as it's described, or was it more of like the war in Afghanistan? Everybody knew it was going on over there, but it wasn't impacting their day-to-day lives. World War II seems like it was everyone daily was like, man, we're at war. Husband's out. My uncle
bought bonds,
military
bonds to help fund the war.
donating scrap metal and
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop our recording now just so I can,
Yeah.
because this is a long enough
Sure, you
video
gotta-
to see how and put this together and see what it looks like.